5. The centers or lotuses. Chakra, Padma. At this stage, we are in a position to pass to a consideration of the chakras, which may shortly be described as subtle centers of operation in the body of the Shaktis or powers of the various Tattvas or principles which constitute the bodily sheaths. Thus, the 5 lower chakras from Muladhara to Vishuddha are centers of the bhutas, or 5 forms of sensible matter. The Agnya and other chakras in the region between it and the Sahasrara are centers of the tattvas constituting the mental sheaths, while the Sahasrara or 1,000-petaled lotus at the top of the brain is the blissful abode of Parama Shiva Shakti, which is the state of pure consciousness. A description of the chakras involves, in the first place, an account of the Western anatomy and physiology of the central and sympathetic nervous systems. Secondly, an account of the Tantric nervous system and chakras. And lastly, the correlation, so far as it is possible, of the two systems on the anatomical and physiological side, for the rest is in general particular to Tantric occultism. The Tantric theory regarding the chakras and Sahasrara is concerned on the physiological side, or bhoga-yatna aspect, with the central spinal system, comprising the brain, or ectophalon, contained within the skull, and the spinal cord, contained within the vertebral column. It is to be noted that just as there are 5 centers or chakras hereinafter described, the vertebral column itself is divided into 5 regions, which commencing from the lowest are the coccygeal, consisting of 4 imperfect vertebrae, often united together into one bone called the coccyx. The sacral region consisting of 5 vertebrae united together to form a single bone, the sacrum. The lumbar region, or region of the loins, consisting of 5 vertebrae. The dorsal region, or region of the back, consisting of 12 vertebrae. And the cervical region, or region of the neck, consisting of 7 vertebrae. As exhibited by segments, the cord shows different characteristics in different regions. Roughly speaking, these correspond to the regions which are assigned to the governing control of the Muladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddha centers, or chakras or lotuses. The central system has relation with the periphery through the 31 spinal and 12 cranial nerves, which are both afferent and efferent, or sensory and motor, arousing sensation or stimulating action. Of the cranial nerves, the last 6 arise from the spinal bulb, or medulla, and the other 6, except the olfactory and optic nerves, from the parts of the brain just in front of the bulb. Writers of the yoga and tantra schools use the term nadi by preference for nerves. They also, it has been said, mean cranial nerves when they speak of shriyas, never using the latter for arteries, as is done in the medical literature. It must, however, be noted that the yoga nadis are not the ordinary material nerves, but subtler lines of direction along which the vital forces go. The spinal nerves after their exit from the intervertebral formula, enter into communion with the elongated cords of the sympathetic nervous system, which lie on each side of the vertebral column. The spinal cord extends in the case of man from the upper border of the atlas, below the cerebellum, passing into the medulla, and finally opening into the fourth ventricle of the brain, and descends to the second lumbar vertebrae, where it tapers to a point called the filum terminale. I am told that microscopic investigations by Dr. Cunningham have disclosed the existence of highly sensitive gray matter in the filum terminale, which was hitherto thought to be mere fibrous cord. This is of importance, having regard to the position assigned to the Muladhara and Serpent Power. It is continued in this for a variable distance, and there ends blindly. Within the bony covering is the cord, which is a compound of gray and white brain matter, the gray being the inner of the two, the reverse of the position on the encephalon. The cord is divided into two symmetrical halves, which are connected together by a commissure in the center of which there is a minute canal called the central spinal canal, wherein is the Brahmanadi, which is said to be the remnant of the hollow tube from which the cord and brain were developed. This canal contains cerebrospinal fluid. The gray matter viewed longitudinally forms a column extending through the whole length of the cord, but the width is not uniform. There are special enlargements in the lumbar and cervical regions, which are due mainly to the greater amount of gray matter in these situations. But throughout the whole cord, the gray matter is specially abundant at the junctions of the spinal nerves, so that a necklace arrangement is visible, which is more apparent in the lower vertebrae, corresponding to the ventral galionic chain of the invertebrates. The white matter consists of tracts or columns of nerve fibers. At the upper border of the atlas, or first cervical vertebrae, the spinal cord passes into the medulla oblongata below the cerebellum. The center canal opens into the fourth ventricle of the brain. The cerebellum is a development of the posterior wall of the hindermost of the three primary dilations of the embryonic cerebrospinal tube, the fourth ventricle constituting the remnant of the original cavity. Above this is the cerebrum, which, with the parts below it, is an enlarged and greater modified upper part of the cerebrospinal nervous axis. The spinal cord is not merely a conductor between the periphery and the center of sensation and volition, but is also an independent center or group of centers. There are various centers in the spinal cord, which, though to a considerable extent autonomous, is connected together with the higher centers by the associating and longitudinal tracts of the spinal cord. All the functions which are ascribed primarily to spinal centers, belonging also in an ultimate sense to the cerebral spinal centers. Similarly, all the letters which exist distributed on the petals of the lotuses exist in the Sahasrara. The centers influence not only the muscular combinations concerned in volitional movements, but also the functions of vascular innervation, secretion, and the like, which have their proximate centers in the spinal cord. The cerebral centers are said, however, to control those functions only in relation with the manifestations of volition, feeling, and emotion, whereas the spinal centers with the subordinate sympathetic system are said to constitute the mechanism of unconscious adaptation in accordance with the varying conditions of stimuli which are essential to the continued existence of the organism. The medulla, again, is also both a path of communication between the higher centers and the periphery, and an independent center regulating functions of the greatest importance in the system. It is to be noted that the nerve fibers which carry motor impulses descending from the brain to the spinal cord cross over rather suddenly from one side to the other on their way through the spinal bulb, that's the medulla, a fact which has been noted in the Tantras in the description of the Mukta Triveni. The latter is connected by numerous afferent and efferent tracts with the cerebellum and cerebral ganglia. Above the cerebellum is the cerebrum, the activity of which is ordinarily associated with conscious volition and ideation and the origination of voluntary movements. The notion of consciousness, which is the introspective subject matter of psychology, must not, however, be confused with that of physiological function. There is, therefore, no organ of consciousness, simply because consciousness is not an organic conception and has nothing to do with the physiological conception of energy, whose inner introspective side it presents. Consciousness in itself is the Atma. Both mind and body, of which latter the brain is a part, and veiled expressions of consciousness, which in the case of matter is so veiled that it has the appearance of unconsciousness. The living brain is constituted of gross sensible matter, infused by prana, or the life principle. Its material has been worked upon so as to constitute a suitable vehicle for the expression of consciousness in the form of mind. As consciousness is not a property of the body, neither is it a mere function of the brain. The fact that mental consciousness is affected or disappears with disorders of the brain proves the necessity of the latter, for the expression of such consciousness, and not that consciousness is inherent alone in brain, or that it is the property of the same. On each side of the vertebral column there is a chain of ganglia connected with nerve fiber, called the sympathetic cord, Ida and Pingala, extending all the way from the base of the skull to the coccyx. This is in communication with the spinal cord. It is noteworthy that there is in the thoracic and lumbar regions a ganglion of each chain, corresponding with great regularity to each spinal nerve, though in the cervical region many of them appear to be missing, and that extra large clusters of nervous structure are to be found in the region of the heart, stomach, and lungs, the regions governed by the Anahata, Manipura, and Vishuddha respectively, the three upper of the 5 chakras hereinafter described. From the sympathetic chain on each side, nerve fibers pass to the viscera of the abdomen and thorax. From these, nerves are also given off, which pass back into the spinal nerves and others which pass into some of the cranial nerves. These are thus distributed to blood vessels of the limbs, trunk, and other parts to which the spinal or cranial nerves go. The sympathetic nerves chiefly carry impulses which govern the muscular tissue of the viscera and the muscular coat of the small arteries of the various tissues. It is through the sympathetic that the tone of the blood vessels is kept up by the action of the vasomotor center in the spinal bulb. The sympathetic, however, derives the impulses which it distributes from the central nervous system. These do not arise in the sympathetic itself. The impulses issue from the spinal cord by the anterior roots of the spinal nerves and pass through short branches into the sympathetic chains. The work of the sympathetic systems controls and influences the circulation, digestion, and respiration. The anatomical arrangement of the central nervous system is excessively intricate, and the events which take place in that tangle of fiber, cell, and fibril are on the other hand even now almost unknown. And so it has been admitted that in the description of the physiology of the central nervous system, we can as yet do little more than trace the paths by which impulses may pass between one portion of the system and another, and from the anatomical corrections deduce with more or less probability the nature of the physiological nexus which its parts form with each other and the rest of the body. In a general way, however, there may be reasons to suppose that there are nervous centers in the central system related in a special way to special mechanisms, sensory, secretory, or motor, and that centers such as the alleged genitospinal center for a given physiological action exist in a definite portion of the spinal cord. It is the subtle aspect of such centers as expressions of consciousness or Chaitanya embodied in various forms of Maya Shakti which is here called chakra. These are related through intermediate conductors with the gross organs of generation, micturition, digestion, cardiac action, and respiration in ultimate relation with the Muladhara, Swadishthana, Manipura, Anahata, and Vishuddha chakras respectively, just as tracts have been assigned in the higher centers as being in special, even if not exclusive relation with the various perceptive, volitional, and ideative processes. With this short preliminary in terms of modern Western physiology and anatomy, I pass to a description of the chakras and nadis, or nerves, and will then endeavor to correlate the two systems. The conduits of pranic or vital force are the nerves called nadi, which are reckoned to exist in thousands in the body. As in the leaf of the ashwatha tree, there are minute fibers. So is the body permeated by nadis. Nadi is said in verse 2 to be derived from the root or motion. For here the prana or life principle moves. The Buddha Shuddhi Tantra speaks of 72,000, the Prapanchasara Tantra of 300,000, and the Shiva Samhita of 350,000. But of these, whatever be their total extent, only a limited number are of importance. Some are gross nadis, such as the physical nerves, veins, and arteries known to medical science. But they are not all of this gross or physical and visible character. They exist, like all else, in subtle forms, and are known as yoga nadis. The latter may be described as subtle channels of pranic or vital energy. The nadis are, as stated, the conduits of prana. Through them, its solar and lunar currents run. Could we see them, the body would present the appearance of those maps which delineate the various ocean currents. They are the paths along which prana Shakti goes. They therefore belong to the vital science as life element, and not to the medical Shastra. Hence the importance of the sadhana, which consists of the physical purification of the body and its nadis. Purity of body is necessary if purity of mind is to be gained in its extended Hindu sense. Purification of the nadis is perhaps the chief factor in the preliminary stages of this yoga. For just as their impurity impedes the ascent of Kundalini Shakti, their purity facilitates it. This is the work of pranayama. Of these nadis, the principal are 14, and of these 14, Ida, Pingala, and Shushumna are the chief. Of these three, again, Shushumna is the greatest, and to it all others are subordinate. For by the power of yoga, prana is made to go through it, and passing the chakras, leave the body through the Brahmarandra. It is situate in the interior of the cerebrospinal axis, the Merudanda, or spinal column, in the position assigned to its interior canal, and extends from the basic plexus, the Tattvic center, called the Muladhara, to the 12-petaled lotus in the pericap of the Sahasrara Padma, or 1,000-petaled lotus. Within the fiery red tamasic Shushumna is the lustrous Rajasic Vajra, or Vajrini Nadi, and within the latter the pale nectar-dropping Sattvic Chitra, or Chitrini. The interior of the latter is called the Brahma Nadi. The first is said to be fire-like, Vani Swarupa. The second, sun-like, Surya Swarupa. And the third, moon-like, Chandra Swarupa. These are the threefold aspect of the Shabda Brahman. The opening at the end of the Chitrini Nadi is called the door of Brahman, or Brahmadwara, for through it the Devi Kundalini enters to ascend. It is along this last mentioned Nadi, known as the Kula Marga and the Royal Road, that the Shakti Kundalini is led in the process hereafter described. Outside this nerve are the two nadis, the pale Ida, or Shashi, which is moon, and the red Pingala, or Mihiri, meaning sun, which are connected with the alternate breathing from the right to the left nostril and vice versa. The first, which is feminine and the embodiment of nectar, is on the left, and the second, which is masculine, as being in the nature of Rudra, is on the right. They both indicate time, or Kala, and Shushumna devours Kala. For on that path entry is made into the timelessness. The three are also known as Ganga, which is Ida, Yamuna, which is Pingala, and Saraswati, which is Shushumna, after the names of the three sacred rivers of India. The Muladhara is the meeting place of the three rivers, and hence is called Yukta Triveni. Proceeding from the Adhara lotus, they alternate from right to left and left to right, thus going round the lotuses. According to another account, their position is that of two bows on either side of the spinal cord. An Indian medical friend tells me that these are not discrepant accounts, but represent different positions according as Ida and Pingala exist inside or outside the spinal cord. When they reach the space between the eyebrows, known as Agnya chakra, they enter the Shushumna, making a plaited knot of three called Mukta Triveni. The three rivers, which are again united at this point, flow separately therefrom, and for this reason the Agnya chakra is called Mukta Triveni. After separation, the nadi which proceeded from the right testicle goes to the left nostril, and that from the left testicle to the right nostril. It has been said that the distinction made between the heating sun and cooling moon is that which exists between the positive and negative phases of the same subject matter, positive and negative forces being present in every form of activity. Pingala is thus, according to this view, the conduit of the positive solar current, and Ida of the negative lunar current. There are also, as we have seen, interior solar and lunar nadis in the fiery Shushumna, where the two currents meet. These are all but microcosmic instances of the vaster system of cosmic matter, every portion of which is composed of three gunas, and the threefold bindus, which are sun, moon, and fire. As regards nerve cords and fibers, cranial and spinal nerves, and the connected sympathetic nerves, Dr. Brojendranath Seal says, with the three writers on the yoga, all the three shiras, and such of the dhamanis as are not the vehicles of vital current, metabolic fluid, lymph, chile, or blood, are cranial nerves, and proceed from the heart through the spinal cord to the cranium. These cranial nerves include pairs for the larynx and the tongue, for the understanding and use of speech, for the raising and lowering of the eyelids, for weeping, for the sensations of the special senses, etc., a confused and unintelligent reproduction of Shushratha's classification. But the enumeration of the spinal nerves with the connected sympathetic chain and ganglia is a distinct improvement on the old anatomists. He then continues, the Shushumna is the central cord in the vertebral column, or Brahmananda. The two chains of sympathetic ganglia on the left and right are named Ida and Pingala respectively. The sympathetic nerves have their main connection with the Shushumna at the solar plexus, or Nabhi chakra. Of the 700 nerve cords of the sympathetic spinal system, the 14 most important are: number 1, Shushumna, in the central channel of the spinal cord. Number 2, Ida, the left sympathetic chain, stretching from under the left nostril to below the left kidney in the form of a bent bow. Number 3, Ida, the corresponding chain on the right. Number 4, Kuhu, the pudic nerve of the sacral plexus, to the left of the spinal cord. Number 5. Gandhari, to the back of the left sympathetic chain, supposed to stretch from below the corner of the left eye to the left leg. It was evidently supposed that some nerves of the cervical plexus came down through the spinal cord and joined on to the great sciatic nerve of the sacral plexus. Number 6. Hasti-jiva, to the front of the left sympathetic chain, stretching from below the corner of the left eye to the great toe of the left foot on the same supposition as before. Pathological facts were believed to point to a special nerve connection between the eyes and the toes. Number 7. Saraswati, to the right of the Sushumna, stretching up to the tongue. Number 8. Pusha, to the back of the right sympathetic chain, stretching from below the corner of the right eye to the abdomen, a connected chain of cervical and lumbar nerves. Number 9. Payasvini, between the Pusha and Saraswati auricle branch of the cervical plexus on the left. Number 10. Sankhini, between the Gandhari and Saraswati auricle branch of the cervical plexus on the left. Number 11. Yashaswini, to the front of the right sympathetic chain, stretching from the right thumb to the left leg. The radial nerve of the brachial plexus continued on to certain branches of the great sciatic. Number 12. Varuna, the nerves of the sacral plexus between Kuhu and Vashasvini, ramifying over the lower trunk and limbs. Number 13. Vishuddha, the nerves of the lumbar plexus between Kuhu and Hasti-jiva, ramifying over the lower trunk and limbs. And number 14. Alambusha, the coccygeal nerves proceeding from the sacral vertebrae to the urinogenitary organs. The tattvas in the body pervaded by prana have certain special centers of predominance and influence therein, which are the chakras or padmas, of which this work is a description. Inside the meru or spinal column are the 6 main centers of tattvic operation, called chakras or padmas, which are the seats of Shakti, as the Sahasrara above is the abode of Shiva. These are the Muladhara, Swadishthana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddha, and Agnya, which are in the physical body, and are said to have their correspondences in the principal nerve plexuses and organs, commencing from what is possibly the sacrococcygeal plexus to the space between the eyebrows, which some identify with the pineal gland, the center of the third or spiritual eye, and others with the cerebellum. The chakras themselves are, however, as explained later, centers of consciousness or chaitanya, are extremely subtle force, Shakti, but the gross regions which are built up by their coarsened vibrations, which are subject to their influence, and with which loosely and inaccurately they are sometimes identified, have been said to be various plexuses in the trunk of the body, and the lower cerebral centers mentioned. In the portion of the body below the Muladhara are the 7 lower worlds, Patala and others, together with the Shaktis which support all in the universe. The first center, or Muladhara chakra, which is so called from its being the root of Shushumna, where Kundalini rests, is at the place of meeting of the Kanda, which is root of all Nadis, and the Shushumna Nadi, and is in the region midway between the genitals and the anus. It is thus the center of the body for men. By this and similar statements made as regards to other lotuses, it is not meant that the chakra proper is in the region of the gross body described, but that it is the subtle center of that gross region, such center existing in the spinal column which forms its axis. The reader must bear this observation in mind in the descriptions of the chakras, or an erroneous notion will be formed of them. This crimson Muladhara lotus is described as one of 4 petals, the Vritis of which are the 4 forms of bliss, known as Paramananda, Shahajananda, Yogananda, and Viranananda. On these 4 petals are the golden letters Van, Sham, Sham, and Sam. Each letter in its Vaikari form is a gross manifestation of inner or subtle Shabda. On the petals are figured the letters, which are each a mantra, and as such a devata. The letters are configurations made by the positions of the nadis at any particular center, and are in themselves prana shakti manifested by prana vayu in the living body. When that vayu departs, they cease to be manifest. Each letter is thus a particular Shabda or Shakti, and a surrounding devata of the principal devata, and its Shakti of the particular chakra. As Shakti, they are manifestations of Kundalini, and in their totality constitute her mantra body, for Kundalini is both light and mantra. The latter is the gross or stula aspect of which japa is done. The former is the shukshma or subtle aspect which is led up to in yoga. Their specific enumeration and allocation denote the differentiation in the body of the total Shabda. This lotus is the center of the yellow Prithvi or earth Tatva, with its quadrangular mandala, the bija or mantra of which Tatva is Lam. At the center is the Prithvi Tatva, the bija of which is La, with Bindu or the Brahma consciousness presiding over this center or Lam, which is said to be the expression in gross or Vaikari sound of the subtle sound made by the vibration of the forces of this center. So again, the subtle Tejas Tattva and its bija Ram is in the Manipura chakra, and the gross fire known as Vaishvanara is in the physical belly, which the subtle center governs. This bija represents in terms of mantra the tattva regnant at this center and its essential activity. With the symbolism used throughout this work, bija is said to be seated on the elephant Airavata, which is here located. This and other animals figured in the chakras are intended to denote the qualities of the tattvas there regnant. Thus, the elephant is emblematic of the strength, firmness, and solidity of the tattva of earth. They are further the vehicles of the devatas there. Thus, in this chakra, there is the seed mantra or bija, of Indra, whose vehicle is the elephant Airavata. The Devata of this center is, according to the text, the creative Brahma, whose Shakti is Savitri. There also is the Shakti known as Dakini, who, as also the other Shaktis, Lakini and the rest which follow, are the Shaktis or the Dhatus of bodily substances assigned to this and other centers. Here is the female triangle or yoni known as Tripura, which is the Shakti Pita in which is set the male Shiva Linga known as Swayambhu, of the shape and color of a young leaf, representing, as do all the Devis and Devas, the Maya Shakti and Chit Shakti aspects of the Brahman as manifested in the particular centers. The lingas are four: Swayambhu, Bana, Itara, Para. According to the Yogi Nidriya Tantra, they are so called because they lead to Chit. They are the Pittas, Karmarupa, and the rest because they reflect Chit. They are Vritis of Manas, Ahamkara, Buddhi, Chitta. To the first three are assigned certain forms and colors, namely yellow, red, white, triangular, circular, as also certain letters, namely the 16 vowels, the consonants ka to ta, soft, and ta to sa. Para is formless, colorless, and letterless, being the collectivity or samashti of all letters in the form of bliss. The Tripura is the counterpart in the jiva of the Kamakala of the Sahasrara. The Devi Kundalini, luminous as lightning, shining in the hollow of this lotus like a chain of brilliant lights, the world bewilderer who maintains all breathing creatures, lies asleep, coiled 3.5 times round the linga, covering with her head the Brahmadwara. The Swadhisthana chakra is the second lotus, proceeding upwards, and is, according to the commentary, so called after Sva, or the Praram lingam. It is a vermilion lotus of 6 petals placed in the spinal center of the region at the root of the genitals. On these petals are the letters like lightning: Bam, Bham, Mam, Yam, Ram, Lam. Water is the Tatva of this chakra, which is known as the white region of Varuna. The Tatvic mandala is in the shape of a crescent moon. The bija of water, or Varuna, is Vam. This, the Varuna bija, is seated on a white makara, with the noose in his hand. Hari, or Vishnu, and Rakini Shakti of furious aspect, showing her teeth fiercely, are here. Above it, at the center of the region of the navel, is the lotus Manipura, so called according to the Gautamiya Tantra, because owing to the presence of the fiery Tejas, it is lustrous as a gem. It is a lotus of 10 petals on which are the letters Dam, Dham, Nam, Tam, Tham, Dam, Dham, Nam, Pam, Pam. This is the triangular region of the Tejas Tattva. The triangle has 3 swastikas. The red bija of fire, Ram, is seated on a ram, the carrier of Agni, the lord of fire. Here is the old red Rudra, smeared with white ashes, and the Shakti Lakini, who as the Devata of this digestive center is said to be fond of animal food, and whose breasts are ruddy with the blood and fat which drop from her mouth. Lakini and the other special Shaktis of the centers here are the Shaktis of the yogi himself, that is, Shaktis of the Dhatus assigned to each of his bodily centers, and the concentration on this center may involve the satisfaction of the appetite of this Devata. The Shaktis of the higher centers are not meat-eaters. From these 3 centers, the gross Virat, waking body, is evolved. Next, above the navel lotus, is the Anahata, in the region of the heart, which is red like a Paduka flower, and is so called because it is in the place that Munis or sages hear that sound, the Anahata Shabda, which comes without the striking of any 2 things together, or the sound of the Shabda Brahman, which is here the pulse of life. For it is here that the Purusha or Jivatma dwells. This lotus is to be distinguished from the heart lotus of 8 petals, which is represented in the place below it, where in mental worship the Patreon deity or Ishta Devata is meditated upon. Here is the tree which grants all desires, and the jeweled altar beneath it. As the Vishvasara Tantra cited in the Pranastoshti says, Shabda Brahman is said to be Deva Sadashiva. That Shabda is said to be in the Anahata chakra. Anahata is the great chakra in the heart of all beings. Omkara is said to be there in association with the 3 gunas. The Mahashvachandra Tantra says, the great ones declare that thy blissful form, O Queen, manifests in Anahata, and is expressed by the mind, inward turned of the blessed ones, whose hairs stand on end, and whose eyes weep with joy. There is a lotus of 10 petals with the vermilion letters Kam, Kam, Gam, Gam, Nam, Cham, Tam, Jam, Jam, Nyam, Tam, Tam. This is the center of the Vayu Tatva. According to verse 22, the region of the Vayu is 6-cornered, that is, formed by 2 triangles, of which one is inverted, and its color that of smoke by reason of its being surrounded by masses of vapor. Its bija, Yam, is seated on a black antelope, which is noted for its fleetingness, and the Vahana of air, of Vayu, with its property of motion. Here are Isha, the overlord of the first 3 chakras, the Shakti Kakini, garlanded with human bones, whose heart is softened by the drinking of nectar, and the Shakti in the form of an inverted triangle, wherein is the golden Bana Linga, joyous with a rush of desire, and the Hamsa as Jivatma, like the steady flame of a lamp in a windless place. The Atma is so described because, just as the flame is undisturbed by the wind, So the Atma is in itself unaffected by the motions of the world. The 17th verse of the Ananda Lahiri mentions that the Devata Vashini and others are so to be worshipped in the last two mentioned chakras. Vashini and others are 8 in number. Number 1, Vashini. 2, Kameshwari. 3, Modini. 4, Vimala. 5, Arjuna. 6, Jayani. 7, Sarveshwari. And 8, Kali or Kaulini. The other beings in verse 17 of Ananda Lahiri refer to the 12 yoginis, who are Vidya Yogini, Rechika, Mochika, Amrita, Dipika, Jnana, Apayayani, Vyapini, Medha, Vyomarupa, Siddhirupa, and Lakshmi Yogini. These 12 deities, 8 Vashinis and 12 yoginis, are to be worshipped in Manipura and Anahata centers. In respect to this, the commentator quotes a verse from the Taitiri Yaranakya and gives a description of these deities in their respective colors, place, and so forth. At the spinal center of the region at the base of the throat is the Vishuddha chakra, or Bharittasthana, with 16 petals of a smoky purple hue, on which are the 16 vowels with bindu thereon, that is, am, im, im, rim, 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 lrim, aim, aim, om, and aum, and the 2 breathings aim, ah. According to the Devi Bhagavata, the chakra is so called because the jiva is made pure or Vishuddha by seeing the Hamsa. Here is the center of the white circular akasha or ether Tatva, the bija of which is Ham. Akasha is dressed in white and mounted on a white elephant. Its mandala is in the form of a circle. Here is Sadashiva in his androgyny or Ardha Rishvara Murti, in which half the body is white and the other half is gold. Here also is the white Shakti, Shakini, whose form is light. Here too, in the lunar region, the gateway of the great liberation. It is at this place that the jnani sees the 3 forms of time, or Trikala Darshi. As all things are in the Atma, the jnani who has realized the Atma has seen them. Above the Vishuddha, at the root of the palate, is a minor chakra called Lalana, or in some tantras, Kala chakra, which is not mentioned in the works here translated. It is a red lotus with 12 petals bearing the following vritti or qualities: Shraddha or faith, Santosha, contentment, Apardha or sense of error, Dhamma or self-command, Mana or anger, Sneha or affection, Shuddhata or purity, Arti or detachment, Sambrahma or agitation, Urmi or appetite. Before summarizing the previous description, it is to be here observed that the commentator Kali Charana states the principle of this yoga to be that which is grosser is merged into that which is more subtle, The grosser are lower in the body than the more subtle. The gross, which are in and below the Muladhara, or connected with it, are the Prithvi Tanmatra, the Prithvi Mahabhuta, the nostrils with their sense of smell, which is the grossest of the senses of knowledge, and which is the quality of the Prithvi Tanmatra, and the feet, which are the grossest of the senses of action, and which have Prithvi for their support. Here the nostrils are classified as the grossest of the Jnanendriyas, because therein is the sense which perceives the quality or guna of smell of the grossest Tanmatra, from which is derived the Prithvi Stula Bhuta. Thus the Jnanendras have a relation with the Tanmatras through their gunas or qualities, for the perception of which these senses exist. In the case, however, of the senses of action or karmendriya, no such relation appears to exist between them and the Tanmatras. In the order of successive merging or laya, the feet occurs in the same grade as earth, hands in the same grade as water, anus in the same grade as fire, penis in the same grade as air, and mouth in the same grade as ether, not apparently because there is any direct relation between earth and feet, water and hands, fire and anus, and so forth, but because these organs are in the same order of comparative subtlety as earth, water, fire, and so forth. Hands are supposed to be subtler agents than feet, the anus a subtler agent than hands, the penis a subtler agent than the anus, and the mouth a subtler agent than the penis. This is also the order in which these agents are situated in the body, the hands coming second because they find their place between the feet and the anus when the arms are given their natural vertical positions. It is to be remembered in this connection that the Tantras here follow the Samkhya, and the state and scheme of creation as it occurs also in the Puranas, according to which the Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas and the Tanmatras issue from different aspects of the threefold Amkara. There is a relation between the senses and the Tanmatras in the created Jiva, according to the Vedanta, for the senses are related to the Tanmatras, but the order, in that case, in which the senses occur is different from that given in this work. For in the Vedantic scheme, earth is related to the sense of smell and penis, water to the sense of taste and anus, fire to the sense of sight and feet, air to the sense of touch and hands, and ether to the sense of hearing, and mouth. Another explanation, seemingly artificial, however, which has been given is as follows. The feet are associated with earth because the latter alone has the power of support, and the feet rest on it. Water is associated with the hands because in drinking water the hand is used. The word pani, which means hands, is derived from the root pa, to drink. Fire is associated with the anus because what is eaten is consumed by fire in the stomach, and the residue is passed out through the anus, whereby the body becomes pure. Air is associated with the penis because in procreation the Jivatma as pranavayu throws itself out through the penis. And so the Shruti says, Atma itself is reborn in the sun. Ether is associated with the mouth because by the mouth sound is uttered, which is the guna or quality of ether. Hitherto we have dealt with the comparatively gross tattvas. According to this work, the 20 grosser tattvas are associated with the following: Muladhara. Grosser tattva is gandha or smell. Tanmatra, Prithvi tattva or earth, the Jnanendriya of smell, the Karmendriya of feet. Swadhisthana, the grosser tattvas are rasa or taste tanmatra, up tattva or water, the Jnanendriya of taste, the Karmendriya of hands. Manipura, the grosser tattva being rupa or sight tanmatra, tejas tattva meaning fire, the Jnanendriya of sight, the Karmendriya of anus. Anahata, the grosser tattva of sparsha or touch tanmatra, vayu tattva meaning air, the Jnanendriya of touch, the Karmendriya of penis. Vishuddha, the grosser tattva, Shabda or sound tanmatra, Akasha tattva meaning ether, the Jnanendriya of hearing, the Karmendriya of mouth. It will be observed that with each of the elements is associated an organ of sensation meaning Jnanendriya and action Karmendriya. In chapter 2 of the Prana-Pachasra Tantra, it is said, ether is in the ears, air in the skin, fire in the eye, water in the tongue, and earth in the nostrils. The Karmendriyas are possibly so arranged because the tattvas of the respective centers in which they are placed are, as above stated, of similar grades of subtlety and grossness. As explained below, each class of tattvas is dissolved in the next higher class, commencing from the lowest and grossest centers, the Muladhara. So far the tattvas have been those of the matter side of creation. Progress is made to the last or Agnya chakra, in which are the subtle tattvas of mind and prakriti. The chakra is so called because it is here that the command or Agnya of the Guru is received from above. It is a lotus of 2 white petals between the eyebrows, on which are the letters Ham and Khyam. This exhausts the 50 letters. It will have been observed that there are 50 petals and 50 letters in the 6 chakras. In the pericarp is the great mantra Om. Each lotus has either 2 or 4 more petals than the one immediately below, and the number of the petals in the Vishuddha chakra is the sum of the preceding differences. Here are Paramashiva in the form of Hamsa, Siddhak, the white Hakini Shakti, elated by draughts of ambrosia, the inverted triangle or Yoni or Trikona, and the Ithara Linga, shining like lightning, which is set in it. The 3 lingas are thus in the Muladhara, Anahata, and Agnya chakras respectively, for here at 3 knots or Brahma Granthis, the force of Maya Shakti is in the great strength. And this is the point at which each of the 3 groups of tattvas associated with fire, sun, and moon converge. The phrase opening the doors refers to passage through these granthis. Here in the Agnya is the seat of the subtle tattvas Mahat and Prakriti. The former is the Antakarana with gunas, namely Buddhi, Chitta, Ahamkara, and its product Manas. Commonly and shortly it is said that Manas is the Tatva of the Agnya chakra. As, however, it is the mental center, it includes all the aspects of mind above stated, and the Prakriti whence they derive, as also the Atma in the form of the Pranava, Om, its bija. Here the Atma shines lustrous like a flame. The light of this region makes visible all which is between the Mula and the Brahmarandra. The yogi, by contemplation of this lotus, gains further powers, or siddhi, and becomes Advaita Charavidi, or monist. In connection with this Padma, the text explains how detachment is gained through the yoni mudra. It is here that the yogi at the time of death places his prana and then enters the supreme primordial deva, the Purana, meaning ancient Purusha, who was before the three worlds and is known by the Vedanta. The same verse describes the method prana ropana prakara. From the last center and the causal prakriti is evolved the subtle body, which individually is known as Taijasa, and collectively as Hiranyagarbha. The latter term is applied to the manifestation of the Paramatma in the Anatkarana. As displayed in prana, it is Sutra Atma, and when manifested through these two vehicles without differentiation, it is known as the Antaryamin. The chakras are the bodily centers of the world of differentiated manifestation, with its gross and subtle bodies arising from their causal body, and its threefold planes of consciousness in waking, sleeping, and dreamless slumber. Above the Agnya chakra, there are the minor chakras called Manas and Soma, not mentioned in the text here translated. The Manas chakra is a lotus of 6 petals, on the petals of which are, that is, which is the seat of, the sensations of hearing, touch, sight, smell, taste, and centrally initiated sensations in dream and hallucination. Above this again is the Soma chakra, a lotus of 16 petals, with certain Vritis which are detailed later. In this region are the house without support, that is Niralambu Puri, where yogis see the radiant Ishwara. The 7 causal bodies, which are intermediate aspects of Adya Shakti, the white 12-petaled lotus by the pericarp of the Sahasrara, in which 12-petaled lotus is the Akatha triangle, which surrounds the jeweled altar, that is Manipura, on the Isle of Gems, that's Manidvipa, set in the ocean of nectar, with Bindu above and Nada below, and the Kamakala triangle, and the Guru of all, or Parama Shiva. Above this again in the pericarp are the Surya and Chandra mandalas, the Parabindu surrounded by the 16th and 17th digits of the moon circle. In the Chandra mandala there is a triangle. Above the moon is Mahavayu, and then the Brahmarandra with Mahasamkini. The 12-petaled lotus, and that which is connected with it, is the special subject of the short book Paduka-Panchaka Stotra, here translated, which is a hymn by Shiva in praise of the five-fold footstool, with a commentary by Sri Kalicharana. The footstools are variously classified as follows. According to the first classification, they are 1. The white-petaled lotus in the pericap of the Sahasrara lotus. Here there is 2. The inverted triangle, the abode of Shakti, called Anahata. 3. The region of the altar, or Manipura, on each side of which are Nada and Bindu. The eternal Guru, white like a mountain of silver, should be meditated upon, as on the jeweled altar, that's Manipura. 4. The fourth Paduka is the Hamsa below the Antaratma. And 5. The triangle on the Pitta. The differences between this and the second classification are explained in the notes to verse 7 of the Paduka. According to this latter classification, they are counted as follows. 1. The 12-petaled lotus. 2. The triangle called Anahata. 3. Nada Bindu. 4. The Manipura mandala. And 5. The Hamsa which makes the triangular Kamakala. This triangle, the supreme Tatva, is formed by the 3 bindus which the text calls Chandra or moon, Surya or sun, and Vani or fire bindus, which are also known as Prakasha, Vimarsha, and Mishra bindu. This is the Hamsa known as the triangular Kamakala, the embodiment of Purusha Prakriti. The former is the Bindu Hamkara at the apex of the triangle, and the 2 other Bindus, called Visarga or Sa, are Prakriti. This Kamakala is the Mula or root of mantra. The Shabda Brahman, with its threefold aspect and energies, is represented in the Tantras by this Kamakala, which is the abode of Shakti. This is the supreme triangle, which, like all Yoni-pitas, is inverted. It may be here noted that Shakti is denoted by a triangle because of its threefold manifestations as will, action, and knowledge, which are Ichcha, Kriya, and Jnana. So on the material plane, if there are 3 forces, there is no other way in which they can be brought to interact, except in the form of a triangle in which, while they are each separate and distinct from one another, they are yet related to each other and form part of the whole. At the corners of the triangle there are 2 bindus, and at the apex a single bindu. These are the bindus of fire, moon, and sun. 3 Shaktis emanate from these bindus, denoted by the lines joining the bindus and thus forming a triangle. These lines are the line of the Shakti Vama, the line of the Shakti Jeshta, and the line of the Shakti Raudri. These Shaktis are volition, that's Ichcha, action, that's Kriya, and cognition, that's Jnana. With them are Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra associated with the gunas, Rajas, Sattva, and Tamas. The lines of the triangle emanating from the 3 bindus, or Hamsa, are formed by 48 letters of the alphabet. The 16 vowels beginning with A form one line. The 16 consonants beginning with Ka form the second line. And the following 16 letters beginning with Ta form the third line. Hence the triangle is known as A, Ka, Ta triangle. In the inner three corners of the triangle are the remaining three letters Ha, La, Ksha. The Yamala thus speaks of this abode. I now speak of Kamakala, and proceeding says, she is the Eternal One, who is the three Bindus, the three Shaktis, and the three forms, or Trimurti. The Brihat Shri Krama, in dealing with Kamakala, says, from the Bindu, she has assumed the form of letters. The Kali Urdhvamnaya says, the threefold Bindu, or Tribindu, is the supreme Tatva, and embodies in itself Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The triangle which is composed of the letters has emanated from the Bindu. These form the body of Kula Kundalini, the Shabda Brahman, being in their Vaikari state various manifestations of the primal, unmanifested sound, or Avyakta Nada. They appear as manifested Shabda on the self-division of the Parabindu, for this self-division marks the appearance of the differentiated Prakriti. The commentary on the Paduka-Panchaka says that the Bindu is Parashakti itself, and its variations are called Bindu, Nada, and Bija, or sun, moon, and fire. Bindu, the sun, being red, and Nada, the moon, being white. These form the Chinmaya or Anandamaya Kosha, or sheaths of consciousness and bliss. The two Bindus making the base of the triangle are the Visarga. In the Agma Kalpadruma it is said, Hamkara is Bindu or Purusha, and Visarga is Sa or Prakriti. Hamsa is the union of the male and female, and the universe is Hamsa. The triangular Kamakala is thus formed by Hamsa. The Hamsa Pitha is composed of mantras. As this subject is of great importance, some further authorities than those referred to in the work here translated are given. In this commentary to verse 124 of the Lalita, in which the Devi is addressed as being in the form of Kamakala, Bhaskararya says, there are three Bindus and the Hardhakala. Of these Bindus, the first is called Kama, and the Hardkarharda is named Kala. He adds that the nature of Kamakala is set forth in the Kamakala Vilasa in the verses commencing Supreme Shakti, is the manifested union of Shiva and Shakti in the form of seed and sprout, and ending with the lines Kama, or means, desire, and Kala the same. The two Bindus are said to be the fire and moon. Kama, or creative will, is both Shiva and Devi, and Kala is their manifestation. Hence it is called Kamakala. This is explained in the Tripura Siddhanta. O Parvati, Kala is the manifestation of Kameshvara and Kameshvari. Hence she is known as Kamakala, or she is the manifestation or Kala of desire, Kama, that is, of Ichcha. The Kalika Purana says, Devi is called Kama because she came to the secret place on the blue peak of the great mountain or Kailasa, along with me for the sake of desire, that is Kama. Thus Devi is called Kama. As she is also the giver or fulfiller of desire, desiring, desirable, beautiful, restoring the body of Kama, and destroying the body of Kama. Hence she is called Kama. After Shiva, with whom she is one, had destroyed Kama, when he sought by the instillment of passion to destroy his yoga, so she afterwards gave a new body to the bodiless one. They destroy the worlds and take them to themselves through the cosmic yoga path, and again by their desire and will recreate them. These Bindus and Kala are referred to in the celebrated hymn, Wave of Bliss. This Devi is the great Tripura Sundari. Bhaskara Raya's guru, Nrisimhananda Anahata, wrote the following verse on which the disciple commentates. I him, Tripura, the treasure of Kula, who is red of beauty, her limbs like unto those of Kamaraja, who is adorned by the three Devatas of the three Gunas, who is the desire of Shiva, who dwells in the Bindu and who manifests the universe. She is called Tripura, as she has three Puras, that is, three cities, but here meaning Bindus, angles, lines, syllables, etc. The Kalika Purana says she has three angles in the triangular yoni, as well as three circles, or the three Bindus, and her Bhupara has three lines. Her mantra is said to be of 3 syllables, and she has 3 aspects. The Kundalini energy is also threefold, in order that she may create the 3 gods, that's Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra. Thus, since she, the supreme energy, is everywhere triple, she is called Tripura Sundari. These syllables are said by the commentator last cited to be the 3 bijas of the 3 divisions, Vagbhava, Kamaraja, and Shakti, which according to the Vameshvara Tantra are the Jnana Shakti, which confers salvation, and the Kriya and Icha Shaktis. 3 Pada are also spoken of as Tripura, white, red, and mixed. Elsewhere, as in the Varha Purana, the Devi is said to have assumed 3 forms, white, red, and black, that is, the supreme energy endowed with the sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic qualities. The one Shakti becomes 3 to produce effects. In the Kamakala meditation, or dhyana, the 3 Bindus and Hardakala are thought of as being the body of the Devi Tripura Sundari. The commentator on the verse of the Andala Lahiri cited says, in the 5th sacrifice, or yajna, let the sadhaka think of his Atma as in no wise different form, but as the one only Shiva, and of the subtle thread-like Kundalini, which is all Shaktis, extending from the Adhara lotus to Paramashiva. Let him think of the 3 Bindus as being in her body, which Bindus indicate Ichcha, Kriya, Jnana, or moon, fire and sun, Rajas, Tamas and Sattva, Brahma, Rudra and Vishnu, and let him meditate on the Chitkala, who is Shakti below it. The Bindu, which is the face, indicates Virnichi, or Brahma, associated with the Rajas guna. The two Bindus, which are the breasts, and upon which meditation should be done in the heart, indicate Hari, that's Vishnu, and Hara, that's Rudra, associated with the Sattva and Tamas gunas. Below them meditate in the yoni upon the subtle Chitkala, which indicates all three gunas, and which is all these three devatas. The meditation given in the Yogini Tantra is as follows. Think of the three bindus above Kala, and then that from these a young girl, 16 years old, springs forth, shining with the light of millions of rising suns, illuminating every quarter of the firmament. Think of her body from crown to throat as springing from the upper bindu, and that her body from throat to middle, with its two breasts and three belly lines of beauty, arise from the two lower bindus. Then imagine that the rest of her, from genitals to feet, is born from Kama. Thus formed, she is adorned with all manner of ornaments and dress, and is adorned by Brahma, Isha and Vishnu. Then let the sadhaka think of his own body as such Kamakala. The Sri Tattvarna says, the glorious men who worship in that body in Samarsaya are freed from the waves of poison in the untraversable sea of the world, or samsara. To the same effect are the tantric works, the Sri Krama and Bhavachudamani, cited in the commentary to the Ananda Lahiri. The first says, of the three Bindus, O mistresses of the Devas, let him contemplate the first as the mouth, and in the heart the two Bindus as the two breasts. Then let him meditate upon the subtle Kala, Hakarda, in the yoni. And the second says, the face in the form of Bindu, and below twin breasts, and below them the beauteous form of Hakardha. The three devatas, Brahma, Vishnu and Rudra, with their Shaktis, are said to take birth from the letters A, U, M of the Omkara or Pranava. Ma, as the Prapanchasara Tantra says, is the sun or Atma among the letters, for it is Bindu. From each of these 10 kalas arise. Verse 8 of the first work translated says that in the Muladhara center there is the triangle or trikona known as Tripura, which is an adjective of Tripura. It is so called because of the presence of the Devi Tripura within the Ka inside the triangle. This Ka is the chief letter of the Kama Bija, and Kam is the Bija of Kamini, the aspect of Tripura Sundari in the Muladhara. Here also, as the same verse says, there are the 3 lines Vama, Jeshta and Raudri, and as the Shat-chakra-nirupana adds, Icha, Jnana and Kriya. Thus the Tripura Trikona is the gross or stula aspect of that subtle or Shushma Shakti, which is below the Sahasrara and is called Kamakala. It is to this Kamini that in worship the essence of japa is offered, the external japa being offered to the devata worshipped, in order that the sadhaka may retain the fruits of his worship. There are also two other lingas and trikonas at the Anahata and Agnya centers, which are the two of the knots or granthis, and which are also called because Maya is strong at these points of obstruction, at which each of these three groups converge. The Tripura Trikona is that, however, in the Muladhara, which is the grossest correspondence of the Kamakala, which is the root or mula of all mantras below the Sahasrara, and which again is the correspondence in Jiva of the Tribindu of Ishwara. Before, however, dealing in detail with the Sahasrara, the reader will find it convenient to refer to the tables on page 141 and 142, which summarizes some of the details above given, up to and including the Sahasrara. In the descriptions of the chakras given in this work, no mention is made of the moral or other qualities and things which are associated with the lotuses in other books, such as the Abhya Mayavivika, commencing with the root lotus and ending with the Soma chakra. Thus, the Vritis, Parshariya, Avishvasa, Avajna, Murcha, Sarvanasha, Krurata are assigned to Swadhisthana. Lajja, Pishunati, Irsha, Trishna, Shushupati, Vishuddha, Kashya, Moha, Grina, Bhaya, to the Manipura. Asha, Chinta, Cheshta, Mamata, Dambha, Vikalata, Amkara, Viveka, Lota, Kapatata, Vitarka, Anutapa, Kripa, Mriduta, Dhairya, Vairagya, Driti, Sampat, Hasya, Romancha, Vinya, Dhyana, Shustrirata, Gambhirya, Udyama, Akshobha, Aundharya, Ekagrata, to the secret Soma chakra, and so forth. In the Muladhara, which has been described as the source of a massive pleasurable anesthesia, there are the 4 forms of bliss already mentioned. In the Vishuddha, the 7 subtle tones, Nishada, Rishabha, Gandhara, Sajja, Madhyama, Dhaivata, Panchama, certain bijas, Ham, Fat, Vaushat, Vashat, Svadha, Svaha, Namha. In the 8-petal venom, and in the 16th nectar, and in the petals and pericarp of the Agnya, the 3 gunas, and in the former the bijas, Ham and Ksham, and in the 6-petaled Manas chakra above the Agnya are Sabdha-jnana, Sparsha-jnana, Rupa-jnana, Agranopalabdhi, Rasopabhoga, and Swapna, with their opposites, denoting the sensations of the sensorium, hearing, touch, sight, smell, taste, and centrally initiated sensations in dream and hallucination. It is stated that particular vrittis are assigned to a particular lotus, because of a connection between such vritti and the operation of the Shaktis of the Tatva at the center to which it is assigned. That they exist at any particular chakra is said to be shown by their disappearance when Kundalini ascends through the chakra. Thus, the bad vrittis of the lower chakras pass away in the yogi who raises Kundalini above them. Moral qualities or vritti appear in some of the lower chakras in the secret 12-petaled lotus called the Lalana chakra, situate above the Vishuddha at the root of the palate, as also in the 16-petaled lotus above the Manas chakra, and known as the Soma chakra. It is noteworthy that the vritti of the two lower chakras, that is Swadhisthana and Manipura, are all bad. Those of the Anahata center are mixed. Those of the Lalana chakra are predominantly good, and those of the Soma chakra wholly so. Thus indicative of an advance as we proceed from the lower to the higher centers, and this must be so as the jiva approaches or lives in his higher principles. In the 12-petaled white lotus in the pericap of the Sahasrara is the abode of Shakti called the Kamakala already described. Between the Agnya and Sahasrara at the seat of the Karana Sharira of Jiva are the Varna Valirupa Viloma Shaktis descending from Unmani to Bindu. Just as in the Ishvara or cosmic creation there are 7 creative Shaktis from Shakala Parmeshwara to Bindu, and in the microscopic or Jiva creation 7 creative Shaktis from Kundalini, who is in the Muladhara, to Bindu, both of which belong to what is called the Anuloma order. So in the region between the Agnya chakra and Sahasrara, which is the seat of the causal body, there are 7 Shaktis, which, commencing with the lowest, are Bindu, Bodhini, Nada, Mahanada or Nandata, Vyapika, Samani, and Unmani, that's in Shiva Tatva. Though these latter Shaktis have a cosmic creative aspect, they are not here coextensive with the present, a different aspect from the latter. They are not coextensive because the last mentioned Shaktis are, as here mentioned, Shaktis of the Jiva. Hamsa, Jiva or Kundalini is but an infinitesimal part of the Parabindu. The latter is in the Sahasrara or 1,000-petaled lotus, the abode of Ishvara, who is Shiva Shakti and is in the seat of the aggregate Kundalini or Jiva. And hence it is said that all the letters are here 20-fold. In the Sahasrara are Parabindu, the supreme Nirvana Shakti, Nirvana Kala, Amkala, and the fire of Nibodhika. In the Parabindu is the empty void or Shunya, which is the supreme Nirguna Shiva. Another difference is to be found in the aspect of the Shaktis. Whilst the cosmic creative Shaktis are looking outward and forwards, the Shaktis above the Agnya are, in yoga, looking backwards, towards dissolution. The Ishvara of the Sahasrara is not then the creative aspect of Ishvara. There he is in the Nirvana mood, and the Shaktis leading up to Nirvana Shakti are upward moving, that is, liberating Shaktis of the Jiva. These 7 states or aspects of Bindu Maya Parashakti leading up to Unmani, which are described in this and other Tantric books, are called causal forms or Karana Rupa. The commentary on the Lalita apparently enumerates 8, but this seems to be due to a mistake. Shakti and Vyapika being regarded as distinct Shaktis instead of differing names for the third of this series of Shaktis. Below Visarga and the exit of Samkini Nadi is the supreme white lotus of 1,000 petals, known as Sahasrara, on which are all the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet, omitting, according to some, the cerebral lakara, and according to others, ksha. These are repeated 20 times to make the 1,000, and are read from beginning to end, going round the lotus from right to left. Here is Mahavayu and the Chandra Mandala, in which is the supreme Bindu, O, which is served in secret by all the Devas. Bindu implies guna, but it also means the void of space, and in its application to the supreme light, which is formless, is symbolical of its decaylessness. The subtle shunya, or void, which is the Atma of all being, that is Sarva Atma, is spoken of in verse 42 to 49. Here in the region of the Supreme Lotus is the Guru, the Supreme Shiva himself. Here the Shaivas call it Shivasthana, the abode of bliss, where the Atma is realized. Here too is the Supreme Nirvana Shakti, the Shakti in the Parabindu, and the mother of all 3 worlds. He who has truly and fully known the Sahasrara is not reborn in the samsara, for he has by such knowledge broken all the bonds which held him to it. His earthly stay is limited to the working out of the karma already commenced and not exhausted. He is the possessor of all siddhi, is liberated through living, or jivan mukta, and attains bodiless liberation, which is moksha, or vidhe kaivalya, on the dissolution of his physical body. In the 14th verse, and commentary thereon, of the Ananda Lahiri, the deity in the Sahasrara is described. She is above all the tattvas. Every one of the 6 centers represents a tattva. Every tattva has a definite number of rays. The 6 centers or chakras are divided into 3 groups. Each of these groups has a knot or apex where converge the chakras that constitute that group. The names of the groups are derived from those of the presiding deities. Lakshmidhara quotes the Taittiriya in support of his commentary, from which we have taken the notes above given. The extracts which he makes from Bhairava Yamala are very valuable. In discoursing about Chandra, Shiva addresses Parvati, his consort, thus: Welcome, O beauty, of the 3 worlds, welcome is thy question. This knowledge which I am about to disclose is the secret of secrets, and I have not imparted to anyone till now. But I shall now tell thee the grand secret, Listen then with attention. Sri Chakra, meaning in the Sahasrara, is the form of Parashakti. In the middle of this chakra is a place called Baindava, where she, who is above all Tattvas, rests united with her Lord Sadashiva. O Supreme One, the whole cosmos is in Sri Chakra formed of the 25 Tattvas, 5 elements, 5 tanmatras, 10 indriyas, mind and maya, Shuddha Vidya, Mahesha and Sadashiva. Just as it is in Sahasrara, so cosmically also, Baindava is above all Tattvas. Devi, the cause of the creation, protection and destruction of the universe, rests there, ever united with Sadashiva, who as well is above all Tattvas and ever shining. Uncountable are the rays that issue forth from her body. O good one, they emanate in thousands, lakhs, nay, crores. But for this light, there would be no light at all in the universe. 360 of these rays illumine the world in the form of fire, sun and moon. These 360 rays are made up as follows. Agni or fire is 118, sun is 106, moon 136. O Shankari, these 3 luminaries enlighten the macrocosm as well as the microcosm, and give rise to the calculation of time, the sun for the day, the moon for the night, Agni occupying a mean position between the two. Hence they constitute Kala, which is time, and the 360 days make a year. The Veda says, the year itself is a form of the Lord of time, the maker of the world, first created Marchi, the Munis, the protectors of the world. Everything has come to exist by the command of Parmeshwari. Dindima takes quite a different view of this verse. He interprets it as meaning that, having already described the Antavyaga, or inner worship, the author recommends here the worship of the Avarana Devatas, that is, deities residing in each of the chakras or centers, without propitiating whom it is impossible for the practitioner to lead the Kundalini through these chakras. He enumerates all the 360 deities and describes the mode of worshipping each of them. There are other commentators who understand the 360 rays esoterically and connect the same with the 360 days of the year and also with the human body. Every commentator quotes the Taittiriya, first chapter, to support his views. Thus it seems that the Taittiriya contains much esoteric matter for the mystic to digest. The first chapter of the Aranyaka referred to is chanted in worshipping the sun. It is called Arunam because it treats of Aruna, meaning red-colored Devi. An Indian physician and Sanskritist has expressed the opinion that better anatomy is given in the Tantras than in the purely medical works of the Hindus. It is easier, however, to give a statement of the present and ancient physiology than to correlate them. Indeed, this is for the present a difficult matter. In the first place, the material as regards the latter is insufficiently available and known to us, and those native scholars and sadhakas, nowadays probably not numerous, who are acquainted with the subject, are not conversant with Western physiology, with which it would be compared. It is further possible to be practically acquainted with this yoga without knowing its physiological relations. Working in what is an unexplored field, I can only here put forward on the lines of the text and such information as I have gathered, explanations and suggestions which must in some cases be of tentative character, in the hope that they may be followed up and tested by others. It is clear that the Marundanda is the vertebral column, which is the axis of the body, and is supposed to bear the same relation to it as does Mount Meru to the earth. It extends from the mula, or root, or Muladhara, to the neck. It and the connected upper tracts, spinal bulb, cerebellum, and the like, contain what has been described as the central system of spinal nerves, or nadi, and cranial nerves, that's shironadi. The Sushumna, which is undoubtedly a nadi within the vertebral column, and as such is well described by the books as the principal of all nadis, runs along the length of the Merudanda, as does the spinal cord of Western physiology, if we include therewith the filum terminale. If we include the phylum, and take the khanda to be between the anus and penis, it starts from practically the same, that's the sacrococcygeal region, the Muladhara, and is spoken of as extending to the region of the Brahmarandra, or to a point below the 12-petaled lotus, that is, at the spot below but close to the Sahasrara or cerebellum, where the nerve Chitrini also ends. The position of the khanda is that stated in this work. It is to be noted, however, that according to the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the khanda is higher up, between the penis and the navel. The place of the union of Sushumna and khanda is known as the knot, and the petals of the Mula lotus are on the 4 sides of this. It is in this Sushumna that there are the centers of Prana Shakti, or vital power, which are called Chakras or lotuses. The spinal cord ends blindly in the filum terminale and is apparently closed there. The Sushumna is said to be closed at its base, called the gate of Brahman, until by yoga Kundalini makes its way through it. The highest of the 6 centers, called Chakra in the Sushumna, is the Agnya, a position which corresponds frontally with the space between the eyebrows, and at the back with the pineal gland, the pituitary body, and the top of the cerebellum. Close by it is the chakra called Lalana, and in some tantras called Kala chakra, which is situated at the root of, that is, just above the palate. Its position as well as the nature of the Agnya would indicate that it is slightly below the latter. The Sushumna passes into the ventricles of the brain, as does the spinal cord, which enters the fourth ventricle. Above the Lalana are the Agnya chakra with its 2 lobes, and the Manas chakra with its 6 lobes, which it has been suggested are represented in the physical body by the cerebellum and sensorium respectively. The Soma chakra above this, with its 16 petals, has been said to comprise the centers in the middle of the cerebrum above the sensorium. Lastly, the 1,000-petaled lotus Sahasrara corresponds to the upper cerebrum of the physical body with its cortical convolutions. Just as all powers exist in the seat of voluntary action, so it is said that all the 50 letters which are distributed throughout the spinal centers of the Sushumna exist here in multiplied form, that is, 50 times 20. The nectar-rayed moon is possibly the under part of the brain, the convolutions or lobes of which, resembling half-moons, are called Chandrakala, and the mystic Mount Kailasha is undoubtedly the upper brain. The ventricle connected with the spinal cord is also semi-lunar in shape. As above stated, there is no doubt that the Sushumna is situated in the spinal column, and it has been said that it represents the central canal. It is probable that its general position is that of the central canal. But a query may be raised if it is meant that the canal alone is the Sushumna. For the latter Nadi, according to this work, contains within it 2 others, namely Vajrini and Chitrini. There is thus a threefold division. It has been suggested that the Sushumna, when not considered with its inner nadis as a collective unit, but as distinguished from them, is the white nervous matter of the spinal cord, Vajrini the grey matter, and Chitrini the central canal, the inner nadi of which is known as Brahma Nadi, and in the Shiva Samhita, Brahmarandra. But as against such suggestion, it is to be noted that verse 2 of this work describes Chitrini as being as fine as a spider's thread, and the grey matter cannot be so described, but is as a gross thing. We must therefore discard this suggestion and hold to the opinion either that the central canal is the Sushumna, or that the latter is in the canal, and that within or part of it are 2 still more subtle and imperceptible channels of energy called Vajrini and Chitrini. I incline to the latter view. The truth nature of the Chitrini Nadi is said in verse 3 to be pure intelligence as a force of consciousness. As verse 1 says, the 3 form one, but considered separately they are distinct. They are threefold in the sense that Sushumna, who is tremendous like a woman in passion, is as a whole composed of sun, moon, and fire, and the 3 gunas. It is noteworthy in this connection that Kshrukya Upanishad, which speaks of the Sushumna, directs the sadhaka to get into the white and very subtle nadi, and to drive prana vayu through it. These 3, Sushumna, Vajrini, and Chitrini, and the central canal of Brahma Nadi, through which in the yoga there described Kundalini passes, are all in any case part of the spinal cord. And as the Shiva Samhita and all other yoga works say, the rest of the body is dependent on Sushumna as being the chief spinal representative of the central nervous system. There seems also to be some ground to hold that the Nadis, Ida and Pingala, or moon and sun, are the left and right sympathetic chords respectively on each side of the fiery Sushumna. It is to be noted that, according to one, and a common notion reproduced in this work, these nadis, which are described as being pale and ruddy respectively, do not lie merely on one side of the cord, but cross it, alternating from one side to the other, thus forming with the Sushumna and the two petals of the Agnya chakra the figure of the Cadius of Mercury, which according to some represents them. Elsewhere, however, it is said that they are shaped like bows. That is, one is united with Sushumna and connected with the left scrotum. It goes up to a position near the left shoulder, bending as it passes the heart, crosses over to the right shoulder, and then proceeds to the right nostril. Similarly, the other nadi connected with the right scrotum passes to the left nostril. It has been suggested to me that Ida and Pingala are blood vessels representing the interior vena cava and aorta, but the works and the yoga processes itself indicate not arteries but nerves. Ida and Pingala, when they reach the space between the eyebrows, make with the Sushumna a plaited threefold knot called Triveni, and proceed to the nostrils. This, it has been said, is the spot in the medulla where the sympathetic chords join together, or whence they take their origin. There remains to be considered the position of the chakras. Though this work speaks of 6, there are, according to some, others. This is stated by Vishwanatha in his Shat-chakra-nirupana. Thus we have mentioned Lalana, Manas, and Soma chakras. The 6 here given are the principal ones. Indeed, a very long list exists of chakras, or adharas as some call them. In a modern Sanskrit work called Advaita Martanda, the author gives 20, numbering them as follows: 1. Adhara, 2. Kuladipa, 3. Vajra or Yajna, 4. Swadhisthana, 5. Raudra, 6. Karala, 7. Gavhara, 8. Vidyaprada, 9. Trimukha, 10. Tripada, 11. Kala Dandaka, 12. Ukara, 13. Kaladvara, 14. Karamgaka, 15. Dipaka, 16. Ananda Lalita, 17. Manipuraka, 18. Nakula, 19. Kalabhendana, 20. Mahotsaha. Then, for no apparent reason, many others are given without numbers, a circumstance as well as defective printing, which makes it difficult in some cases to say whether the Sanskrit should be read as one word or 2. They are apparently Parama, Padukam, Padam, Kalapajala, Poshaka, Lolama, Nadavarta, Triputa, Kamakalaka, Puta Bhedana, Magha Grantivirka, Badhara Vajana, or which is printed as Bandhe Valana, Anahata, Yantra Puta, printed as Yatra, Vyoma Chakra, Bodhana, Dhruva, Kala Kandalaka, Kraucha Chabhe Rudra Vani Bhava, Damara, Kula Pitaka, Kula Kolaha, Halavarta, Mahabadhya, Ghora Bhairava, Vishuddhi, Gantham, Uttama, Purnakam, Ajnya, Kakaputam, Shringatam, Karmarupa, Purnagiri, Mahavyoma, Shakti Rupa. But as the author says in the Vedas, we read of only 6 chakras, namely those italicized in the above list and described in the works here translated. And so it is said, how can there be any siddhi for a man who knows not the 6 adhyas, the 16 adharas, and the 3 lingas, and the 5 elements, the first of which is ether? I have already pointed out that the positions of the chakras generally correspond to spinal centers of the anatomical divisions of the vertebrae into 5 regions, and it has been stated that the padmas or chakras correspond with various plexuses which exist in the body surrounding those regions. Various suggestions have been made. The author of the work cited identifies the chakras with the sacral, prostatic, epigastric, cardiac, laryngeal, and cavernous plexuses, and the Sahasrara with the medulla. In passing, it may be noted that the last suggestion cannot in any event be correct. It is apparently based on verse 120 of chapter 5 of the Shiva Samhita, but this work does not, in my opinion, support the suggestion. Elsewhere the author cited rightly identifies Mount Kailasa with the Sahasrara, which is undoubtedly the upper cerebrum. The anatomical position of the medulla is below that assigned to the Agnya chakra. Professor Sarkar's work contains some valuable appendices by Dr. Brojendranath Seal on, amongst others, Hindu ideas concerning plant and animal life, physiology and biology, including accounts of the nervous system in Charaka and in the Tantras. After pointing out that the cerebrospinal axis with the connected sympathetic system contains a number of ganglionic centers and plexuses, that's chakras or padmas, from which nerves, or nadis, radiate over the head, trunk, and limbs, the latter says, as regards the ganglionic centers and plexuses, consisting the sympathetic spinal system. Beginning with the lower extremity, the centers and plexuses of the connected spinal and sympathetic systems may be described as follows. 1. The Adhara chakra, the sacral coccygeal plexus with 4 branches, 9 ganglios, below the solar plexus, the source of a massive, pleasurable anesthesia, voluminous, organic sensations of repose, 1.5 inches above it and the same distance below the membrane virile, is a minor center called the Agni Sikha. 2. The Swadhisthana chakra, the sacral plexus with 6 branches, is concerned in the excitation of sexual feelings with the accompaniments of lassitude, stupor, cruelty, suspicion, and contempt. 3. The Nabhikanda, that is corresponding to the solar plexus, which forms the great junction of the right and left sympathetic chains with the cerebrospinal axis. Connected with this is the Manipura, the lumbar plexus, with connected sympathetic nerves, the 10 branches of which are concerned in the production of sleep and thirst, and the expressions of passion like jealousies, shame, fear, and stupefaction. 4. The Anahata chakra, possibly the cardiac plexus of the sympathetic chain, with 12 branches, connected with the heart, the seat of the egoistic sentiments, hope, anxiety, doubt, remorse, conceit, egoism, and so on. 5. The Bharatishthana, the junction of the spinal cord with the medulla oblongata, which by means of nerves like the pneumonic, gastric, and so on, regulate the larynx and other organs of articulation. 6. The Lalana chakra opposite the uvula, which has 12 leaves or lobes, supposed to be the tract affected in the production of ego-altruistic sentiments and affections like self-regard, pride, affection, grief, regret, respect, reverence, contentment, and so on. 7. The sensory motor tract, comprising of 2 chakras, the Agnya chakra, which is the circle of command over movements with its 2 lobes, and the Manas chakra, the sensorium, with its 6 lobes. The Agnavaha Nadis, efferent or motor nerves, communicate motor impulses to the periphery from this Agnya chakra, this center of command over movements. And the afferent or sensory nerves of the special senses in pairs, the Gandhavaha Nadi, that is the olfactory sensory, the Rupavaha Nadi, that's the optic, the Shabdavaha Nadi, that's the auditory, the Rasavaha Nadi, that's the gustatory, and the Sparshavaha Nadi, that's tactile, come from the periphery of this Manas chakra, the sensory tract at the base of the brain. The Manas chakra also receives the Manavaha Nadi, a generic name for the channels along which centrally initiated presentations come to the 6th lobe of the Manas chakra. 8. The Soma chakra, a 16-lobed ganglion comprising the centers in the middle of the cerebrum, above the sensorium, the seat of altruistic sentiments and volitional control, for example, compassion, gentleness, patience, renunciation, meditativeness, gravity, earnestness, resolution, determination, magnanimity, and so on. And lastly, number 9, the Sahasrara chakra, 1,000-lobed, the upper cerebrum with its lobes and convolutions, the special and highest seat of the jiva, the soul. Then dealing with the cerebrospinal axis and the heart and their respective relations to the conscious life, the author cited says, Vijnana Bhikshu, in the passage just quoted identifies the Manovāha Nadi, that's the vehicle of consciousness, with the cerebrospinal axis and its ramifications, and compares the figure to an inverted gourd with a 1,000-branched stem hanging down. The Shushumna, the central passage of the spinal cord, is the stem of this gourd. The writers on the Yoga use the term somewhat differently. On this view, the Manovāha Nadi is the channel of the communication of the Jiva, or the soul, with the Manas chakra at the base of the brain. The sensory currents are brought to the sensory ganglia along different nerves of the special senses. But this is not sufficient for them to rise to the level of discriminative consciousness. A communication must now be established between the Jiva in the Sahasrara chakra and the sensory currents received at the sensorium, and this is done by means of the Manovāha Nadi. When sensations are centrally initiated, as in dreams and hallucinations, a special nadi, that's the Swapnavāha Nadi, which appears to be only a branch of the Manovāha Nadi, serves as a channel of communication from the Jiva, or soul, to the sensorium. In the same way, the Agnya-Vāha Nadi brings down the messages of the soul from the Sahasrara to the Agnya chakra, messages which are thence carried further down along efferent nerves to various parts of the periphery. I may add that the special sensory nerves, together with the Manovāha Nadi, are sometimes generally termed Jnana-Vāha Nadi, channel of preservative knowledge. There is no difficulty so far. The Manovāha Nadi and the Agnya-Vāha Nadi connect to sensory motor tract at the base of the brain, with the Manas chakra and Agnya chakra, with the highest and special seat of the soul, the Jiva, in the upper cerebrum, Sahasrara, the one being the channel for carrying up the sensory and the other for bringing down the motor messages. But efforts of the will are conscious presentations, and the Manovāha Nadi must therefore cooperate with the Agnya-Vāha in producing the consciousness of effort. Indeed, attention, the characteristic function of Manas, by which it raises sense presentations to the level of discriminative consciousness, implies effort on the part of the soul, an effort of which we are conscious through the channel of the Manovāha Nadi. But how to explain the presentation of effort in the motor nerves? Shankara Mishra, the author of the Upskara on Kannada's Sutras, argues that the nadis are themselves sensitive, and their affections are conveyed to the sensorium by means of the nerves of the inner sense of touch, which are interspersed with minute fibrillae among them. The consciousness of effort, then, in any motor nerve, whether Agnya-Vāha or Prana-Vāha, depends on the tactile nerves or nerves of organic sensation mixed up with it. Thus, the assimilation of food and drink by the atomic activity of the pranas implies an automatic effort, accompanied by a vague organic consciousness, which is due to the fact that minute fibers of the inner touch sense are interspersed with the machinery of the automatic nerves, that is, the Pranavaha Nadis. To a certain extent, the localizations here must be made tentative. It must, for instance, be a matter of opinion whether the throat center corresponds with the cardioid, laryngeal, or pharyngeal, or all three, whether the navel center corresponds to the epigastric, solar, or lumbar, the Agnya with the cavernous plexus, pineal gland, pituitary body, cerebellum, and so forth. For all that is known to the contrary, each center may have more than one of such correspondences. All that can be said with any degree of certainty is that the four centers above the Muladhara, which is the seat of the presiding energy, have relation to genito-excretory, digestive, cardiac, and respiratory functions, and that the two upper centers, the Agnya and Sahasrara, denote various forms of cerebral activity, ending in the repose of pure consciousness. The uncertainty which prevails as regards some of those matters is indicated in the text itself, which shows that on various of the subjects here debated, differing opinions have been expressed as individual constructions of statements to be found in the Tantras and other Shastras. There are, however, if I read them correctly, statements in the above cited accounts which, though not uncommonly accepted, I disagree. It is said, for instance, that the Adhara chakra is the sacrococcygeal plexus, and that the Swadhisthana is the sacral plexus, and so forth. This work, however, not to mention others, makes it plain that the chakras are in the Sushumna. Verse 1 speaks of the lotuses inside the Meru, or the spinal column. And as the Sushumna supports these, that is, the lotuses, she must need to be within the Meru. This is said in answer to those who, on the strength of a passage in the Tantra Chudamani, erroneously suppose that Sushumna is outside the Meru. In the same way, the commentator refuses the error of those who, relying on the Nigama Tattva Svara, suppose that not only Sushumna, but Ida and Pingala are inside the Meru. Verse 2 says that inside Vajra, which is itself within Sushumna, is Chitrini, on which the lotuses are strung as if it were gems, and who like a spider's thread pierces all the lotuses which are within the backbone. The author in the same place combats the view, based on the Kalpa Sutra, that the lotuses are within the Chitrini. These lotuses are in the Sushumna, and as Chitrini is within the latter, she pierces but does not contain them. Some confusion is raised by the statement in verse 51 that the lotuses are in or on the Brahmanadi, but by this is meant appertaining to this nadi, for they are in the Sushumna, of which the Brahmanadi is the central channel. The commentator Vishwanatha, quoting from the Maya Tantra, says that all 6 lotuses are attached to the Chitrini Nadi. One conclusion emerges clearly from all this, namely, that the lotuses are in the vertebral column in Sushumna, and not in the nerve plexuses which surround it. There in the spinal column they exist as extremely subtle, vital centers of prana Shakti and centers of consciousness. In this connection I may cite an extract from an article on the physical errors of Hinduism, for which I am indebted to Professor Sarkar's work. It would indeed excite the surprise of our readers to hear that the Hindus, who would not even touch a dead body, much less dissect it, should possess any anatomical knowledge at all. It is the Tantras that furnish us with some extraordinary pieces of information concerning the human body. But of all Hindu Shastras extant, the Tantras lie in the greatest obscurity. The Tantric theory on which the well-known yoga Shat-chakra-nirupana is founded supposes the existence of 6 main internal organs called chakras or padmas, all bearing a special resemblance to that famous flower, the lotus. These are placed one above the other and connected by 3 imaginary chains, the emblems of the Ganges, the Yamuna, and the Saraswati. Such is the obstinacy with which the Hindus adhere to these erroneous notions, that even when we show them by actual dissection the non-existence of the imaginary chakras in the human body, they will rather have recourse to excuses, revolting the common sense, than acknowledge the evidence of their own eyes. They say, with a shamelessness unparalleled, that these padmas exist as long as a man lives, but disappear the moment he dies. This, however, is nevertheless quite correct, for conscious and vital centers cannot enter in a body when the organism which they hold together dies. A contrary conclusion might indeed be described as shameless stupidity. The author of the work from which the above citation is made says that though these chakras cannot be satisfactorily identified, the Tantrikas must nevertheless have obtained their knowledge of them by dissection. By this he must refer to the physical regions which correspond to the gross plane and are governed by the chakras proper, which, as subtle, vital, and conscious centers in the spinal cord, are invisible to any but a yogi's vision, existing when the body is alive and disappearing when vitality, that's prana, leaves the body as part of the linga sharira. It is a mistake, therefore, in my opinion, to identify the chakras with the physical plexuses mentioned. These latter are things of the gross body, whereas the chakras are extremely subtle, vital centers of various tattvic operations. In a sense, we cannot connect these with subtle centers of gross bodily parts visible to the eyes as plexuses and ganglia, but to connect or correlate and to identify the different things. Indian thought and the Sanskrit language, which is its expression, have a peculiarly penetrative and comprehensive quality, which enables one to explain many ideas for which, except by paraphrase, there is no equivalent meaning in English. It is by power, or Shakti of the Atma or consciousness, that the body exists. It is the collective prana which holds it together as an individual human unit, just as it supports the different principles and elements, or Tatva, of which it is composed. These Tattvas, though they pervade the body, have yet various special centers of operation. These centers, as one might otherwise suppose, lie along the axis and are the Sukshma Rupa, or subtle forms of that which exists in gross form, Sthula Rupa, in the physical body, which is gathered around it. They are manifestations of Prana Shakti, or vital force. In other words, from an objective standpoint, the subtle centers, or chakras, vitalize and control the gross bodily tracts, which are indicated by the various regions of the vertebral column, and the ganglia, plexuses, nerves, arteries, and organs situated in these respective regions. It is only therefore, if at all, in the sense of being the gross outer representatives of the spinal centers that we can connect the plexuses and so forth with the chakras spoken of in the yoga books. In this sense only, the whole tract which extends from the subtle center to the periphery, with its corresponding bodily elements, may be regarded as the chakra. As the gross and subtle are thus connected, mental operation on the one will affect the other. Certain forces are concentrated in these chakras, and therefore, and by reference to their function, they are regarded as separate and independent centers. There are thus 6 subtle centers in the cord, which grosser embodiments within the cord itself, with still grosser sheaths in the region pervaded by the sympathetic Ida and Pingala, and other Nadis. Out of all this and the gross compounded elements of the body are fashioned the organs of life, the vital heart of which is the subtle chakra by which they are vivified and controlled. The subtle aspects of the 6 centers, according to Tantric doctrine, must not be overlooked, whilst attention is paid to the gross or physiological aspect of the body. As previously and in the commentary to the 35th verse of the Ananda Lahiri explained, there are 6 devas, that is Shambhu, Sadashiva, Ishvara, Vishnu, Rudra, Brahma, whose abodes are the 6 lokas or regions. That's Marloka, Tapoloka, Janaloka, Svarloka, Bhuvaloka, and Burloka, that is the earth. It is these divinities who are the forms of consciousness presiding over the Shat-chakra. In other words, consciousness, that is Chit, as the ultimate experiencing principle, pervades and is at base all being. Every cell of the body has a consciousness of its own. The various organic parts of the body which the cells build have not only particular cell consciousness, but the consciousness of the particular organic part, which is other than the mere collectivity of the consciousness of its units. Thus, there may be an abdominal consciousness, and the consciousness of such bodily regions is its devata. That is, that aspect of Chit which is associated with and informs that region. Lastly, the organism as a whole has its consciousness, which is the individual jiva. Then there is the subtle form or body of these devatas in the shape of mind, supersensible matter, that is tanmatra, and sensible matter, namely ether, air, fire, water, earth, with their centers at the Agnya, Vishuddha, Anahata, Manipura, Swadishthana, and Muladhara. Of these 6 tattvas, not only the gross human body, but the vast macrocosm is composed. The 6 chakras are therefore the divine subtle centers of the corresponding physical and cyclical sheaths. The 7th or supreme center of consciousness is Paramashiva, whose abode is Satyaloka, the cosmic aspect of the Sahasrara in the human body. The Supreme, therefore, descends through its manifestations from the subtle to the gross as the six Devas and Shaktis in their six abodes in the world axis, and as the six centers in the body axis or spinal column. The special operation of each of the tattvas is located at its individual center in the microcosm. But notwithstanding all such subtle and gross transformations of and by Kula Kundalini, she ever remains in her Brahman or Swarupa aspect, the One, Sat, Chit, and Ananda, and is realized by the yogi when drawing the Devi from her world abode in the earth center Muladhara. He unites her with Parma Shiva in the Sahasrara, in that blissful union which is the supreme love, Ananda. In a similar manner, other statements as regards these chakras should be dealt with, as for instance those connected with the existence of the petals, the number of which in each case has been said to be determined by the characteristics of the gross region which the particular chakra governs. The centers are said to be composed of petals designated by certain letters. Professor Sarkar expresses the opinion that these petals point to either the nerves, which go to form a ganglion or plexus, or the nerves distributed from such ganglion or plexus. I have been told that the disposition of the nadis at the particular chakra in question determines the number of its petals. In the 5 lower chakras, these characteristics are displayed in the number and position of the nadis, or by the lobes and sensory and motor tracts of the highest portions of the cerebrospinal system. As I have already explained, the chakras is not to be identified with the physical ganglia and plexuses, though it is connected with, but, and in a gross sense represented by them. The lotuses with these petals are within the Sushumna, and they are there represented as blooming upon the passage through them of Kundalini. The letters are on the petals. The letters in the 6 chakras are 50 in number, namely the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet, less ksha. According to the Kamakala Malini Tantra cited in verse 40, or the second or cerebral la. All these letters multiplied by 20 exist potentially in the Sahasrara, where they therefore number 1000, giving that lotus its name. There are, on the other hand, 72,000 nadis which rise from the Kanda. Further, that these letters in the chakras are not gross things is shown by verse 28 and 29, which says that the vowels of the Vishuddha are visible to the enlightened mind only, that is, the buddhi which is free of impurity resulting from worldly pursuits, as the effect of the constant practice of yoga. Verse 19 and other verses speak of the letters there mentioned as being colored. Each object of perception, whether gross or subtle, has an aspect which corresponds to each of the senses. It is for this reason that the Tantra correlates sound, form, and color. Sound produces form, and form is associated with color. Kundalini is a form of the Supreme Shakti who maintains all breathing creatures. She is the source from which all sound or energy, whether as ideas or speech, manifests. That sound or matrika, when uttered in human speech, assumes the form of letters and prose and verse, which is made of their combinations. And sound or Shabda has its meaning, that is, the objects denoted by the ideas which are expressed by sound or words. By the impulse of the Ichka Shakti, acting through the pranavayu or vital force of the Atma, is produced in the Muladhara the sound power called Para, which in its ascending movement through other chakras takes on other characteristics and names, and when uttered by the mouth appears as Vaikari in the form of the spoken letters, which are the gross aspects of the sound in the chakras themselves. Letters, when spoken, are then the manifested aspect in gross speech of the subtle energy of the Shabda Brahman as Kundalini. The same energy which produces these letters, manifesting as mantras, produces the gross universe. In the chakras is subtle Shabda, in its states as Para, Pashyanti, or Madhyama Shakti, which when translated to the vocal organ assumes the audible sound form, Dhwani, which is any particular letter. Particular forms of energy of Kundalini are said to be resident at particular chakras. All such energies existing in magnified form in the Sahasrara. Each manifested letter is a mantra, and a mantra is the body of a devata. There are therefore as many devatas in a chakra as there are petals, which are surrounding devatas or shaktis of the devata of the chakra, and the subtle element of which he is the presiding consciousness. Thus, Brahma is the presiding consciousness of the Muladhara lotus, indicated by the bindu of the bija La or Lam, which is the body of the earth devata. And around and associated with these are the subtle forms of the mantras, which constitute the petals and the bodies of associated energies. The whole human body is in fact a mantra, and is composed of mantras. These sound powers vitalize, regulate, and control the corresponding gross manifestations in the regions surrounding them. Why, however, particular letters are assigned to particular chakras is the next question. Why, for instance, should Ha be in the Agnya and La in the Muladhara? It is true that in some places in the Tantras, certain letters are assigned to particular elements. Thus, there are certain letters which are called Vayava Varna, or letters pertaining to the Vayu Tatva. But an examination of the case on this basis fails to account for the position of the letters, as letters which are assigned to one element may be found in a chakra, the predominant tattva of which is some other element. It has been said that in the utterance of particular letters, the centers at which they are situated are brought into play, and that this is the solution of the question why those particular letters were at their particular center. A probable solution is that given by me in my Shakti and Shakta. That's a book. Apart from this, one can only say that it is either Swabhava, or the nature of the thing, which in that case is as little susceptible of ultimate explanation as the disposition in the body of the gross organs themselves, or the arrangement may be an artificial one for the purpose of meditation, in which case no further explanation is necessary. The four bhavas, or states of sound in the human body, are so called as being states in which sound or movement is produced, or becomes, evolving from para-shakti in the body of Ishwara to the gross Vaikhari Shakti in the body of Jiva. As already stated, in the bodily aspect, the Karana Bindu resides in the Muladhara center, and is there known as the Shakti Pinda or Kundalini. Kundali is a name for Shabda Brahman in human bodies. The Acharya, speaking of Kundalini, says, "There is a Shakti called Kundalini, who is ever engaged in the work of creating the universe. He who has known her never again enters the mother's womb as a child or suffers old age. That is, he no longer enters the samsara of world of transmigration. This Karana Bindu exists in a non-differentiated condition. The body of Kundali is composed of the 50 letters or sound powers. Just as there is an apparent evolution in the cosmic body of Ishwara, represented in the 7 states proceeding from Shakala, Parmeshwara to Bindu, so there is a similar development in the human body in Kundali, who is the Ishwari therein. There are evolved the following states, corresponding with the cosmic development, that is, Shakti, Dvani, Nada, Nirodhika, Ardhendu, Bindu. These are all states of Kundali herself in the Muladhara, and here known as Para sound. Each one of the letters composing the body of Kundali exists in 4 states as Para-shakti, or in the succeeding states of sound, Payashyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikhari, to which reference is later made. The first is a state of undifferentiated sound, which exists in the body of Ishwara. The second and third, as existing in the body of Jiva, are stages towards that complete manifestation of differentiated sound in human speech, which is called Vaikhari Bhava. In the cosmic aspect, these 4 states are Avyakta, Ishwara, Hiranyagarbha, and Virat. The Artha Shristi, meaning object creation of Kundalini, are the Kalas, which arise from the letters such as the Rudra and Vishnu Murtis and their Shaktis, the Kamas and Ganeshas and their Shaktis, and the like. In the Sakala Parmeshwara, or Shabda Brahman in bodies, that is Kundalini Shakti, the latter is called Chit Shakti, or Shakti simply when Sattva enters, a state known as the Parma Aksha Vastha. When she into whom Sattva has entered is next pierced by Rajas, she is called Dvani, which is the Akasha Vastha. When she is again pierced by Tamas, she is called Nada. This is the Avyakta Avastha, the Avyakta Nada, which is the Parabindu. Again, she in whom tamas abounds, is, as Raghava Bhatta says, called Nirodhika. She in whom sattva abounds is called Arendhu, and the combination of the two, in which Rajas, as Kriya Shakti works, is called Bindu. Thus it has been said, drawn by the force of Ichcha Shakti, or will, illumined by Jnana Shakti, or knowledge, the Lord appearing as male creates Kriya Shakti, or action. When the Karana Bindu sprouts in order to create the three, that is Bindu, Nada and Bija, there arises that unmanifested Brahman, word or sound, called the Shabda Brahman, that's the sound Brahman. It is said, from the differentiation of the Karana Bindu arises the unmanifested sound which is called Shabda Brahman by those learned in Shruti. It is this Shabda Brahman which is the immediate cause of the universe, which is sound and movement manifesting as idea and language. This sound, which is one with the Karana Bindu and is therefore all-pervading, yet first appears in man's body in the Muladhara. It is said, in the Muladhara, in the body, the air or pranavayu first appears. That air acted upon by the effort of a person desiring to speak manifests the all-pervading Shabda Brahman. The Shabda Brahman, which is in the form of the Karana Bindu, when it remains motionless in its own place, that is, in Kundali, who is herself in the Muladhara, is called Parashakti, or speech. The same Shabda Brahman manifested by the same air, proceeding as far as the navel, united with the manas, possessing the nature of the manifested Karya Bindu with general motion, is named Pashyanti speech. Pashyanti, which is described as Jnanatmaka and Bindvatmaka, that is, in the nature of Chit and Bindu, extends from the Muladhara to the navel, or according to some accounts, to the Swadhisthana. Next, the Shabda Brahman manifested by the same air, proceeding as far as the heart, united with the Buddhi, possessing the nature of the manifested Nada, and endowed with special motion, is called Madhyama speech. This is Hirangarbha sound, extending from the region of Pashyanti to the heart. Next, the same Shabda Brahman manifested by the same air, proceeding as far as the mouth, developed in the throat, articulate and capable of being heard by the ears of others, possessing the nature of the manifested bija with quite distinct articulate motion, is called Vaikhari speech. This is the Virat state of sound, so called because it comes out. This matter is thus explained by the Acharya as that sound which first arises in the Muladhara is called Para, next Pashyanti, next when it goes as far as the heart and is joined to the Buddhi is called Madhyama. This name is derived from the fact that she abides in the midst. She is neither like Pashyanti, nor does she proceed outward like Vaikhari, with articulation fully developed, but she is in the middle between these two. The full manifestation is Vaikari, of the man wishing to cry out. In this way, articulated sound is produced by air. The Nitya Tantra also says, the para form rises in the Muladhara, produced by air. The same air, rising upwards, manifested in the Swadhisthana, attains the Pashyanti state. The same slowly rising upwards and manifested in the Anahata, united with the understanding, that's buddhi, is Madhyama. Again rising upward and appearing in the Vishuddha, it issues from the throat as Vaikari. As the Yoga Kundalini Upanishad says, that Vak, meaning power of speech, which sprouts in Para, gives forth leaves in Pashyanti, buds forth in Madhyama, and blossoms in Vaikari. By reversing the above order, sound is absorbed. Whosoever realizes the great Lord of speech, or Vak, the undifferentiated illuminating self, is unaffected by any word, be it what it may. Thus, though there are 4 kinds of speech, gross-minded men who do not understand the first 3, that's para and so forth, think speech to be Vaikari alone, just as they take the gross body to be the self, in ignorance of its subtler principles. Shruti says, hence, men think that alone to be speech which is imperfect. That is, imperfect insofar as it does not possess the first 3 forms. Shruti also says, 4 are the grades of speech. Those Brahmanas who are wise know them. 3 are hidden and motionless. Men speak the 4th. The Sutta Samhita also says, Apada, meaning the motionless Brahman, becomes Pada, meaning the 4 forms of speech, and Pada may become Apada. He who knows the distinction between Pada and Apada, he really sees Brahman. Thus, the conclusions of Shruti and Smriti are that the that in the human body has 4 divisions. But even in the para form, the word tat, or that, only denotes the avyakta with the 3 gunas, the cause of para, and not the unconditioned Brahman who is above avyakta. The word tat, which appears in the transcendental sayings, means the Shabda Brahman, or Ishvara, endowed with the work of creation, maintenance, and destruction of the universe. The same word also indicates indirectly the unconditioned of Supreme Brahman who is without attributes. The relation between the 2 Brahmans is that of sameness. Thus, the Devi or Shakti is the one consciousness bliss. That is, she is ever inseparate from Chit. The relation of the 2 Brahmans is possible, as the 2 are one and the same. Though they appear as different by attributes, yet at the same time they are one. The commentator cited then asks, how can the word tat in the Vaikari form indicate Brahman, and replies that it only does so indirectly. For sound in the physical form of speech, that's Vaikhari, only expresses or is identified with the physical form of Brahman, the Virat, and not the pure supreme Brahman. The following will serve as a summary of correspondences noted in this and the previous chapter. There is first the Nirguna Brahman, which is in its creative aspect Saguna Shabda Brahman, and assumes the form of Parabindu, and then the threefold Tribindu, and is the four who are represented in the sense above stated by the four forms of speech. Sound are state or bhava. The causal or supreme bindu, meaning Parabindu, is unmanifest, undifferentiated Shiva Shakti, whose powers are not yet displayed, but are about to be displayed from out the then undifferentiated state of Mula Prakriti. This is the state of supreme speech, meaning Paravak, the supreme word or logos, the seat of which in the individual body is the Muladhara chakra. So much is clear. There is, however, some difficulty in coordinating the accounts of the threefold powers manifesting upon the differentiation of the great Bindu. This is due in part to the fact that the verses in which the accounts appear are not always to be read in the order of the words, but according to the actual order in fact, whatever that may be. Next, there is some apparent variance in the commentaries. Apart from names and technical details, the gist of the matter is simple, and in accordance with other systems. There is first the unmanifested point or bindu, as to which symbol Saint Clement of Alexandria says that if from a body abstraction to be made of its properties, depth, breadth, and length, that which remains is a point having position, from which if abstraction be made of position, there is the state of primordial unity. There is one spirit which appears threefold as a trinity of manifested power or Shakti. As so manifesting, the one, meaning Shiva Shakti, becomes twofold, Shiva and Shakti, and the relation or nada of these two makes the threefold trinity common in so many religions. The one first moves as the great will or Ichacha, then as knowledge or wisdom, Jnana, according to which will acts, and then as action or Kriya. This is the order of Shaktis in Ishvara. So according to the Puranic account, at the commencement of creation, Brahma wakes. The samskaras then arise in his mind. There arises the desire to create, that's Ichacha Shakti, then the knowledge or Jnana Shakti of what he is about to create, and lastly the action or Kriya of creation. In the case of Jiva, the order is Jnana, Ichcha, Kriya, for he first considers or knows something. Informed by such knowledge, he wills, then acts. The three powers are, though counted and spoken of as arising separately, inseparable and indivisible aspects of the One. Wherever there is one, there is the other. Though men think of each separately and as coming into being, that is, manifested in time separately, according to one nomenclature, the supreme Bindu becomes threefold as Bindu, Bija, Nada. Though Shiva is never separate from Shakti, nor Shakti from Shiva, a manifestation may predominantly signify one or the other. So it is said that Bindu is in the nature of Shiva and Bija of Shakti. Nada is the combination of the two. These are also called Mahabindu or Parabindu, Sita Bindu, Shona Bindu, and Mishra Bindu. These are supreme or para, subtle or shukshma, gross meaning stula. There is another nomenclature: sun, fire, and moon. There is no question but that Bija is moon, that from Bija issues the Shakti Vama, from whom comes Brahma, who are in the nature of moon and willpower, or Ichcha Shakti. Ichcha Shakti in terms of the gunas of Prakriti is Rajas, which impels Sattva to self-display. This is Pashyanti Shabda, the seat of which is in the Swadhisthana chakra. From Nada similarly issue Jesta chakra and Vishnu, and from Bindu, Radri and Rudra, which are Madhyama and Vaikhari Shabda, the seats of which are the Anahata and Vishuddha chakras respectively. According to one account, Bindu is fire and Kriya Shakti or action, and Nada is sun and Jnana Shakti, which in terms of the gunas are tamas and sattva respectively. Raghava Bhatta, however, in his commentary on the Sharada says that the sun is Kriya because, like that luminary, it makes all things visible, and Jnana is fire because knowledge burns up all creation. When Jiva through Jnana knows itself to be Brahman, it ceases to act, so as to accumulate karma, and attains liberation or moksha. It may be that this refers to the Jiva, as the former represents the creation of Ishvara. In the Yogini Nidya Tantra, it is said that Vama and Ichcha Shakti are in the Pashyanti body. Jnana and Jeshta are called Madhyama. Kriya Shakti is Raudri, and Vaikhari is in the form of the universe. The evolution of the bhavas is given in the Sharada Tilaka as follows. The all-pervading Shabda Brahman or Kundali emanates Shakti, and then follow Dhvani, Nada, Nirodhika, Ardhendu, Bindu. Shakti is Chit with Sattva. Dhvani is Chit with Sattva and Rajas. Nada is Chit with Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Nirodhika is the same with abundance of Tamas. Ardhenu is the same with abundance of Sattva, and Bindu the combination of the two. This Bindu is called by the different names of Para and the rest, according as it is in the different centers, Muladhara and the rest. In this way, Kundali, who is Ichcha, Jnana, Kriya, who is both in the form of consciousness and composed of the gunas, creates the garland of letters. The four bhavas have been dealt with as coming under Nada, itself one of the following 9 manifestations of Devi. Pandit Ananta Shastri, referring to Lakshmi Midra's commentary on verse 34 of Ananda Lahiri, says, Bhagavati is the word used in the text to denote Devi. One that possesses Bhaga is called a Bhagavati, or feminine. Bhaga signifies the knowledge of creation, destruction of the universe, the origin of beings, the end of beings, real knowledge of divine truth, and avidya, or ignorance. He that knows all these 6 items is qualified for the title of Bhagwan. Again, Bha or Bhagavati refers to the 9-angled yantra which is used in the Chandra Kala Vidya. According to the Agamas, Devi has 9 manifestations, which are 1. Kala group, lasting from the twinkling of an eye to the pralayat im. The sun and moon are included in this group. Time. 2. Kula group, consists of things which have form and color. Form. 3. Nama group, consists of things which have name. Name. 4. Jnana group, intelligence. It is divided into 2 branches. Savikalpa, meaning mixed and subject to change, and Nirvikalpa, that is pure and unchanging. Chit. 5. Chitta group, consists of Ahamkara or egoism, Chitta, Buddhi, Manas, and Unmanas, mind. 6. Nada group, consists of Raga, meaning desire, Ichcha, meaning desire strengthened or developed desire, Kriti, meaning action or active form of desire, and Prayatna, meaning attempt made to achieve the object desired. These correspond in order to Para, the first stage of sound emanating from Muladhara, to Pashyanti, the second stage, Madhyama, the third stage, and Vaikari, the fourth stage of sound coming out of the mouth. Sound. 7. Bindu group consists of the 6 chakras from Muladhara to Agnya. Psychic essence, the spiritual germ. 8. Kala group consists of 50 letters from Muladhara to Agnya. Keynotes. 9. Jiva group consists of souls in the bondage of matter. The presiding deities or tattvas of the 4 constituent parts of Nada are Maya, Shuddha Vidya, Mahesha, and Sadashiva. The commentator deals with this subject fully, quoting extracts from occult works. The following is a translation of a few lines from Namakala Vidya, a work on phonetics which will be of interest to the reader. Para is eka, meaning without duality. Its opposite is the next one, that's pashyanti. Madhyama is divided into two, gross and subtle forms. The gross form consists of the 9 groups of letters, and the subtle form is the sound which differentiates the 9 letters. One is the cause and the other is the effect. And so there is no material difference between the sound and its gross forms. Kam eka. When the 3 gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, are in a state of equilibrium, that state is called para. Pashyanti is the state when the 3 gunas become unequal and consequently produce sound. The next stage is called madhyama. The subtle form of this is called shukshma madhyama, and the second and gross form is called stula madhyama, which produces 9 distinct forms of sound represented by 9 groups of letters. These letters do not in reality exist, but represent only the ideas of men. Thus, all the forms and letters originate from para, and para is nothing but chaitanya, or consciousness. The 9 groups, or vruhas, meaning manifestations of Devi, are again classified under the following 3 heads. 1. Bhakta, meaning enjoyer, comprises Jiva Vyuha. 2. Bhogya, meaning objects of enjoyment. 3. Bhoga, meaning enjoyment, comprises of Jnana Vyuha. The above is the substance of the philosophy of the Kaulas as expounded by Sri Shankaracharya in this shloka of Ananda Lahiri, that is number 34. In commentating on this, Lakshamidhara quotes several verses from the Kaula Agamas, of which the following is one. The blissful Lord is of 9 forms. This God is called Bhairava. It is he that confers enjoyment or bliss and liberates the souls from bondage. His consort is Ananda Bhairavi, the ever blissful consciousness or Chaitanya. When these two unite in harmony, the universe comes into existence. The commentator remarks here that the power of Devi predominates in creation and that of Shiva in dissolution.